I, 45-year-old female, used to be married to D, 46-year-old male. We were together for 4 years and married for 5 years, from age 18 to 27. I thought the relationship was going well until I discovered D was having an active affair with C, who was 25 at the time and is now 43-year-old female. During that time, I collected evidence, consulted a divorce lawyer, and presented D with divorce papers. D did not protest and left me for C as she was pregnant, and I had trouble conceiving. As the divorce proceeded, I discovered I was pregnant. Through my moral judgment, I decided to keep the baby and have primary custody. As D was enamored with his new fling with C, I would give birth to a healthy baby boy in M, and C would give birth in ND would initially deny paternity of M, but with a DNA test, it is proven he is the father. The boys would grow up to become friends and have a solid relationship despite the tense nature of what transpired between D and me. The boys are now 17 and entering their senior year of high school. N was over last weekend and seemed different, as his mood was sour and he seemed upset. Sitting down with him, I asked what was wrong, and though he appeared apprehensive, he opened up to me about some relationship problems he had been going through. His girlfriend of 2 years had cheated on him, and he was having trouble dealing with the drawbacks of it. He asked me whether or not 2 individuals could reconcile after infidelity. I was honest with him and said that it depended on the individuals, though it was often better if both parties moved on, as trust between the two had been broken and was not easily repaired. He seemed to take the answer in stride, but then asked me a question I wasn't sure I was prepared for. "Is that what happened between you and my father?" I confirmed that it had, which is why D and I divorced, that his father cheated on me with his mother, which resulted in his birth. He seemed conflicted and responded, "So it's all been a lie?" I asked him about that statement, and apparently his father said that I cheated on him. I corrected him on that point and stated the reason for our divorce was infidelity on his father's part, and I had evidence for it. He thanked me for the conversation and said he needed to go home now as it was getting late. I wished him safe travels and thought nothing else of it until a few hours later when I received an angry phone call from C blasting me for why she argued with her son. He went home to have it out with his father over the situation, but he wasn't home yet and couldn't wait. He had a very contentious verbal spat with C, calling her some unpleasant names I would not repeat. She is calling me a homewrecker, the irony in that statement, and that I'm a jerk for poisoning her son's mind. Am I the jerk for what I discussed with him? To add, 1. N and M know they are half-brothers from a young age. I share custody with D as he would have M on the weekends and some holidays. I edited to clarify the relationship as some were confused about how N didn't know he had a brother, but he did. 2. I never discussed with N in explicit detail why I and his father didn't work out, as it only came up in that particular conversation. I explained it to M at one point when he entered high school, and I asked him his opinion on myself dating at this point, as he is getting older but has a relationship with his father to an extent, and he seemed fine with it. 3. This will be the last time I update, as this was meant to be a throwaway account and posting. Please take my experience as you will. Hopefully it may help or intrigue someone. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. 1. The victim never has to stay quiet so the villain can save face. 2. Never let someone lie about you, especially when they're attacking your character. 3. What is done in the dark always comes to light. Comment 2, not the idiot. All you did was tell him the truth. Funny how she's calling you the jerk for poisoning her son when they've been the ones poisoning his mind since birth. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. After that heated conversation with N, things took a turn for the worse. The next day, D showed up at my house unannounced. He was furious, accusing me of trying to turn N against him and C. I tried to explain that N had come to me with questions and I just told him the truth, but D wasn't having any of it. He said I had no right to interfere in his relationship with his son and that I should have kept my mouth shut. It was clear that he was more concerned about maintaining his image than addressing the real issue. A few days later, M came to me with some troubling news. He said that N had been acting out at school, getting into fights and skipping classes. This was completely out of character for N, who had always been a good student and well-behaved. M was worried about his brother and didn't know how to help him. I suggested that he try talking to N, but M said that N had been avoiding him and didn't want to talk about what was going on. Meanwhile, C had been making my life difficult. She started spreading lies about me to other parents at the school, saying that I was trying to sabotage her family. This led to some uncomfortable encounters at school events where I could feel the judgmental stares and hear the whispers behind my back. It was frustrating and hurtful, but I tried to rise above it for the sake of my son. One evening, M came home looking more upset than I had ever seen him. He told me that N had been suspended from school for getting into a physical altercation with another student. Apparently, the other student had made a comment about N's family situation, and N had lost his temper. M was worried that N was spiraling out of control and didn't know how to reach him. I felt helpless, not knowing how to support N without making things worse. In the midst of all this, I received a call from the school counselor. She wanted to discuss N's behavior and see if there was anything that could be done to help him. I agreed to meet with her, hoping that we could come up with a plan to get N back on track. During our meeting, the counselor mentioned that N had been struggling with feelings of betrayal and confusion ever since he found out the truth about his parents' past. She suggested that N might benefit from seeing a therapist to help him process his emotions and work through his anger. I reached out to D&C to discuss the possibility of getting N into therapy, but they were both resistant to the idea. D insisted that N just needed time to cool off and that he would be fine. C, on the other hand, was adamant that I was the cause of N's problems and that therapy wouldn't help. It was clear that they were both in denial about the impact their actions had on their son. As the weeks went by, N's behavior continued to deteriorate. He started hanging out with a rough crowd and getting into more trouble. M was beside himself with worry, and I could see the toll it was taking on him. He felt responsible for his brother and didn't know how to help him. I tried to reassure M that he was doing everything he could, but it was hard to see him so distressed. One night, I received a frantic call from M. He had gone to a party with some friends and found N there, drunk and getting into a fight with another boy. M tried to intervene, but N pushed him away and told him to mind his own business. M was scared for his brother and didn't know what to do. I told him to come home and that we would figure it out together. The next day, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I went to D's house and demanded that we have a serious conversation about N. I told him that our son was in trouble and that we needed to put our differences aside to help him. D finally agreed to sit down and talk, and we came up with a plan to get N into therapy, whether he liked it or not. We managed to convince N to see a therapist, but it was clear that he was reluctant and didn't want to be there. The therapist suggested that we have some family sessions to address the underlying issues and help N feel supported. During one of these sessions, N finally opened up about how betrayed he felt by his parents and how he didn't know who to trust anymore. It was heartbreaking to see him so vulnerable, but it was also a step in the right direction. As we continued with therapy, it became clear that the damage done by D&C's lies was deep and would take time to heal. N struggled with feelings of anger and resentment, and it was a long and difficult process to help him work through those emotions. M was a constant source of support for his brother, but it was clear that the situation was taking a toll on him as well. In the midst of all this, I couldn't help but reflect on my own past and the choices I had made. I realized that I had been so focused on protecting M from the truth that I hadn't considered the impact it would have on N when he eventually found out. It was a painful lesson to learn, but it made me more determined to be honest and open with my son moving forward. As the weeks turned into months, there were small signs of progress. N started to open up more in therapy and began to rebuild his relationship with M. However, the relationship between N and his parents remained strained, and it was clear that there was still a long way to go. Thank you for reading. Am I the idiot for telling my boyfriend to rethink our relationship if he can't explain why he's avoiding intimacy? My boyfriend, 26-year-old, and I, 21-year-old, have been dating for a year or so, just a bit more. Our entire relationship has been very good, and I love him so much. This issue has started within the last 4 months. During the beginning of our relationship, our intimacy life was great. The intimacy was good, the amount we had it, all that. I genuinely never foresaw this becoming a problem. However, around the beginning of February, My boyfriend got really sick, what I think was infection 19, but he never tested for it. He's fine now, but at the time he probably lost 10 pounds just from throwing up. He was sick for weeks. Obviously, during that time, we never had intimacy, but we've literally never had intimacy again since then. Even on our 1-year anniversary, which was in March, he was better, but no intimacy. Amazing dinner, so much fun afterwards, but literally zero intimacy. I was slightly confused, but I let it go. After that, every single time I tried to initiate with him, he rejected me. At first, it was a gentle rejection that didn't hurt me too much, and then it just became stop, not right now, with zero effort or communication as to why. I haven't physically changed since the beginning of our relationship. He always told me how attractive I am, and I never had issues before him. I don't think it's me, but I don't know. It's hard not to think it's me after literally months of rejection. He also doesn't even try with me anymore. He still kisses me, even makes out with me, but he will never ever go further. I've tried so hard to ask him why, ask him if he's okay, but he won't communicate. I've tried to offer other kinds of things besides intimacy, but he doesn't want that either. Eventually last week, after yet another rejection, I broke down crying. I asked him why he was being this way with me. I asked him if he wasn't attracted to me anymore or if he was getting it elsewhere. He told me all of that was wrong and he seemed very apologetic, but yet again, no explanation as to why he's being like this. I told him I was so frustrated with him, the situation sexually, like I just don't get it. He offered no insight, just a bunch of kisses and I'm sorry. I told him the next morning that we needed to rethink our relationship if he can't even tell me why he won't have intimacy with me. I told him if he doesn't want me anymore, then he needed to break up with me and stop playing the long game and making me break up with him. He was so offended and honestly angry with me. He ended up calling me unfair and immature and slammed the door on his way out. We haven't talked much since then, but he's apologized and been adamant that he doesn't want to break up. I just don't know what to do. Am I the jerk for giving him that ultimatum? Would you be able to do this? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. Not even getting an answer when you ask is very unfair. A month of silence despite your patience is grounds for a breakup. Have you thought of COVID-induced erectile dysfunction? COVID weenie is a real medical condition, and that maybe he is afraid to admit his impotence? Does he get hard when you make out? Still a bad sign that he won't talk to you, but if he doesn't know what's going on either, that might partially explain things. Comment 2. It sounds like you are doing a pretty good job of communicating your needs. He is just not opening up to you. Is he getting in hard-on when making out? Even if it is something that isn't really his fault, like medication making his libido drop, it doesn't mean that you also have to suffer. Now, for the update. Thanks for all the comments from the last post. So, after that big argument, things were tense between us. We barely spoke for a few days, and when we did, it was just about mundane stuff like groceries or bills. I felt like I was walking on eggshells around him, and it was exhausting. I knew we couldn't go on like this, so I decided to take a different approach. One evening, I suggested we go for a walk. It was something we used to do a lot when we first started dating, and I thought it might help us reconnect. Surprisingly, he agreed. We walked in silence for a while, but eventually I mustered up the courage to bring up the issue again. I told him how much I missed our intimacy, and how his rejection was affecting me. This time, he didn't get angry. Instead, he looked really sad and said he didn't know how to fix it. A few days later, I noticed he was spending a lot of time on his phone, more than usual. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it made me uneasy. One night, while he was in the shower, I couldn't help myself and checked his phone. I found out he had been looking up articles and forums about intimacy dysfunction and low libido. It was a relief to know he wasn't cheating, but it also made me realize he was struggling with something he didn't know how to talk about. I decided to confront him about it. I told him what I found and asked him why he didn't tell me. He looked embarrassed, but finally opened up. He admitted that ever since he got sick, he hadn't felt the same. He said he was scared and ashamed because he didn't want me to think he was less of a man. It was a heartbreaking moment, but at least we were finally talking. We decided to see a doctor together. The doctor ran some tests and found out that his testosterone levels were really low, likely a result of his illness. The doctor prescribed some medication and suggested therapy to help him deal with the emotional aspects. It was a lot to take in, but I felt hopeful for the first time in months. The medication took a while to kick in, and during that time, we started going to therapy. It was tough at first. He was reluctant to open up, and I was frustrated because I wanted quick results. But slowly, we started making progress. The therapist helped us understand that intimacy isn't just about intimacy. We started focusing on other ways to connect, like spending quality time together and being more affectionate in non-sexual ways. One night, after a particularly good therapy session, we had a long talk about our future. He admitted he was scared I would leave him because of this issue. I told him I loved him and that I was willing to work through it with him, but I needed him to be honest with me. It was a turning point for us. We both cried, but it felt like a weight had been lifted off our shoulders. As the weeks went by, things started to improve. The medication helped, and we were slowly getting back to a place where intimacy was possible. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments of frustration, but we were in it together. We even started planning a weekend getaway to reconnect and take a break from all the stress. But then something unexpected happened. I got a call from my mom saying my dad had a heart attack. He was stable but needed surgery. I was devastated and told my boyfriend I needed to go home for a while. He was supportive and insisted on coming with me. It was a tough time, but having him there made it a bit easier. During the trip, I learned a lot about his family history. He opened up about his dad, who had also struggled with health issues and how it had affected their family. It made me understand him better and why he was so scared to talk about his own problems. It was like a puzzle piece falling into place. When we got back, things were different. We were more open with each other, and it felt like we were finally on the same team. We continued therapy and worked on rebuilding our intimacy. It wasn't just about intimacy anymore. It was about being there for each other in every way possible. Looking back, I realize how much we've grown. It hasn't been easy, and there are still challenges ahead, but I feel more connected to him than ever. We're learning to navigate this new normal together, and for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about our future. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for peeing in my bedroom because my husband locked himself in the bathroom? 24-year-old female, am a big believer in saving your arguments within your own relationship, as long as they are solvable. I feel this way because I wouldn't tell someone every little argument between my 34-year-old husband and me, because then it just clouds the waters. My husband feels the same too. However, what he did to me a few days ago made me run to my mom's house, and I haven't left since. Basically, I was leaving work and I called my husband to please fill up the Brita water container, since he leaves it empty a lot of the time. My water bottle was empty for the day and I was thirsty, that's all. Well, he had an attitude on the phone because apparently he had already done it and I was nagging. I told him it's not nagging when 99% of the time, it's not full. So when I got home, I drank some water and sat down for a while. About an hour later, he got into the shower. I heard him in there and I really had to pee. I knocked on the door, which is usually never a problem, but he wouldn't let me in. So I waited. 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes passed, and he is still not out. By that time, I was on the verge of wetting my pants, so I banged on the door. He told me, oh well, I made my bed by being rude over the water, and now I have to lie in it. I was so angry that I said, fine then, frick you, and stormed towards the door to go to a store and use their bathroom. My husband literally raced me there and manhandled me into our bedroom. He locked me in there for another 2 hours. I peed my pants in there because I had no choice. It was that bad. I was absolutely wailing when he finally let me out, and I didn't even stop to change before I grabbed my keys and went to my mom's house. It's been 15 years since I cried in my mom's arms like that. I was mortified, enraged, hurt, everything. I didn't go back that night, and I haven't gone back since. It's only been 2 days. My husband called me to apologize and has promised me 1,000,001 ways he's going to make it up to me. That was, until he found out I told my mom what happened. He yelled at me for it. I don't know what to do. I feel so bad for breaking our trust like that, but then again, he literally humiliated me over some argument about a Brita. Now for an update. I really don't even know what to say. I didn't expect anyone to see my stupid post, let alone 4,000 comments. I am sorry to those I accidentally triggered. That wasn't my intention at all. I don't know what I am going to do. I am so confused and so hurt to learn that the majority of people think that my husband abuses me. I don't think he does, but I have been doing a lot of reflecting. My mom is still with me, and my husband and I have had a long conversation at her home. He suggested therapy. I think I'm going to try going. Thank you for all of your concern. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. He didn't just humiliate you, he attacked and tortured you. Forget his trust. What about yours? If this isn't the first time he's done something like this, there will be more times after. Overtelling him to refill the water filter jug too? That's crazy. You need to stay at your mom's and leave this piece of shoot, because that is some evil, cruel stuff he did. Comment 2. This is more than humiliation. What he did is straight up abuse. You are very young, don't go back to him. He left you locked in a room knowing you had to use the bathroom. Get a lawyer and end this. There is nothing he can say. Be glad you have your mother for support. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through this. So, after my husband suggested therapy, I decided to give it a shot. We started seeing a therapist together, and at first it seemed like things were getting better. We were both opening up about our feelings, and I felt like we were making progress. But then something happened that changed everything. About a week into therapy, my husband came home from work one day and told me he had a surprise for me. He said he wanted to take me on a weekend getaway to a cabin in the mountains. He thought it would be a good way for us to reconnect and spend some quality time together. I was hesitant at first, but he seemed so sincere, and I wanted to believe that he was trying to make things right. We left for the cabin on Friday evening. The drive up was quiet, but not uncomfortable. I was trying to stay optimistic, hoping that this trip would help us heal. When we arrived, the cabin was beautiful, and for a moment I felt a glimmer of hope. We spent the first night cooking dinner together and talking about our favorite memories from when we first started dating. It felt like old times, and I started to think that maybe we could get through this. The next day, we decided to go for a hike. The weather was perfect, and the scenery was breathtaking. We walked for hours, talking and laughing like we hadn't in a long time. But as we were heading back to the cabin, my husband suddenly stopped and turned to me with a serious look on his face. He told me that he had something important to discuss. He said that he had been thinking a lot about our relationship, and that he realized he had been too controlling. He admitted that he had a problem with anger and that he was willing to do whatever it took to change. I was relieved to hear him say this, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. But then, he dropped a news. He told me that he had been offered a job in another city and he wanted us to move there together. He said it would be a fresh start for us, away from all the negativity and bad memories. I was stunned. I didn't know what to say. On one hand, I wanted to believe that this could be a new beginning for us. But on the other hand, I was terrified of leaving my support system behind and moving to a place where I knew no one. I told him I needed time to think about it, and he seemed to understand. But as the weekend went on, I could feel the tension building. He kept bringing up the move, trying to convince me that it was the best thing for us. I started to feel trapped, like I was being backed into a corner. By the time we left the cabin on Sunday, I was more confused than ever. When we got back home, things took a turn for the worse. My husband became increasingly agitated, and his temper flared up more often. He started accusing me of not being committed to our relationship and of not wanting to make things work. I tried to explain that I just needed more time to process everything, but he wouldn't listen. One night, after another heated argument, he stormed out of the house and didn't come back until the next morning. When he finally returned, he was furious. He accused me of trying to sabotage his career and our future together. I was shocked and hurt by his words, and I didn't know how to respond. In the days that followed, things only got worse. My husband became more controlling and paranoid. He started monitoring my phone calls and questioning me about every little thing. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, constantly trying to avoid setting him off. I knew I couldn't go on like this, but I didn't know what to do. Then, one evening, I received a call from my mom. She told me that she had been worried about me and wanted to know if everything was okay. I broke down and told her everything that had been happening. She was horrified and insisted that I come stay with her for a while. I knew she was right, but I was scared of how my husband would react. I decided to leave while he was at work the next day. I packed a bag and left a note explaining that I needed some time to think and that I would be staying with my mom. When he came home and found the note, he called me, furious. He accused me of abandoning him and threatened to come to my mom's house to drag me back home. I was terrified, but my mom assured me that I was safe with her. She told me that I needed to take care of myself and that I deserved to be treated with respect and kindness. Hearing her say that gave me the strength I needed to stand my ground. In the days that followed, my husband continued to call and text, alternating between begging for forgiveness and threatening me. I knew I couldn't go back to him, but I was still scared of what he might do. My mom suggested that I get a restraining order, and I decided to go through with it. The process was difficult and emotionally draining, but I knew it was the right thing to do. I needed to protect myself and take control of my life. As I sat in the courtroom, waiting for the judge to grant the restraining order, I felt a mix of fear and relief. I knew that this was just the beginning of a long and difficult journey, but I also knew that I was strong enough to get through it. Thank you for reading. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.